Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show with your man here, Brandon Kane. And then I'm always joined here every other Thursday by my guy, Seahawks, Brendon Nelson. What is up, Brendon? Welcome on into the house again, as always.
Thank you for having me back on, man. Good to be back.
I love these discussions. We get into some stuff really deeply in a way that you're not always able to do um, on the surface level of things when you have discussions with people. So I really dig that part. But thank you for always coming aboard here. This has been really popular with all our subs. I know I'm sure you're hearing from your side. I hear from my side. They really like us doing this. Love doing this. And we're gonna try on these as we do at these shows to get to kind of specific topics of discussion and kind of pair them away from other past topics that we might have discussed to kind of get the full view here, because that's the point of this, Brendon. As I say, is you try to operate too, trying to get to the full depth of the discussion here, not just get to the surface level, but try to get underneath it just a little bit. Leading off the top, I think we've got to lead with the news on this, and when I'm interested to hear what your thoughts on this, because I think there's a little bit more on this than just this guy was hired, that guy's hired. What are your thoughts kind of right now as you stand here? You've had a week to kind of simmer on Clint Hurt being elevated. We see the Ed Donatel pull the rug out from under us situation that now has occurred. We get Luke Scott instead. Where, in general terms, first, I got some pointed questions I want to ask you about this hire, but in general terms, what are your feelings right now as we've now added our new defensive coordinator, seemingly, probably it's in the works at some point to come down the pike. But where are you standing right now on it?
Well, it kind of feels to me like the Seahawks played with fire, and it looks like they're going to end up getting burned with the way things are going right now. Obviously, for some reason, the team really, really, really valued keeping Clint Hurt, and they were willing to do whatever it took to keep him, including promoting him all the way to defensive coordinator, even though I think even Carroll would acknowledge that that's a pretty big uptick in his responsibilities from one year to the next year. So to me, it really kind of feels like we went, okay, we do want to bring in some of these outside guys. Like we wanted to bring in Donatel, we want to bring in Desai. We did bring in Carl Scott, I think his name is, not Luke Scott. It's Carl Scott.
I don't know where I'm getting Luke. You're right.
Yeah. So, but we weren't willing to lose Clint Hurt for some reason. So now we have supposedly Clint Hurt as our defensive coordinator. And now we've lost Donatel because of that, because I don't think Donatel would have done this if we gave him the DC position. If we had made him a defensive coordinator, he probably wouldn't pull the rug out to take a lateral move under a rookie head coach on a team that doesn't look any better than us in terms of long-term prospects. And now you may end up seeing something similar with Sean Desai, where Desai may choose. There's at least the possibility being floated that Desai is going to end up in Minnesota as a probably passing game coordinator or secondary coach under Donatel.
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, then that's probably another instance where you could have had him had you chosen to give him the DC job, but for some reason you decided you'd rather keep Clint Hurt than get those guys. And it was a gamble to try to bring on a guy like Donatel as a defensive senior assistant or whatever he was going to be. And my general thought on this right now is, as far as I know, Clint Hurt has not officially been named the defensive coordinator. They're all saying that he's about to be, but he hasn't actually been yet. So honestly, my thought is that you need to pull the rug out from under him and offer that job to Desai if you really want him that badly. Because it kind of seems like, to me, that's the way to get him in here. Okay. Because I'm sorry, but I'm not getting any sense that Clint Hurt has done anything so great in his career that he's somebody you can't afford to lose. You've been over this before. It's not like he developed a lot of great defensive linemen over the last 5 years. You could say maybe Poona Ford, and that's about it. Guys like Jerron Reed and Darrell Taylor, maybe, but those guys are second-round picks. You expect them to be something no matter what, really. Amen. So I know the players really like Clint Hurt. I know that there are some people out there who think highly of him, and I'm not saying anything negative about him. I don't know enough about him to do that. But if you want Desai, and by all accounts this team wants Desai, I think you kind of have to be aggressive here. Because if you just sit back, it seems like, and a lot of this is speculation, we don't know what the Vikings are thinking right now. We don't know what Donatel's thinking. Seems like he might go to the Vikings instead.
Well, and you've given Scott the job now at this point, so you can't even decide the equivalent position of what he would be bringing in going to Minnesota. And I completely agree with you in that I would be open to doing this at this point, because if you end up with Hurt and nothing else, we were talking about a brain trust last week, and that now seems to be just one brain, and
Mhm.
it Hurt at that, who's untested. And again, we are not in the realm here. We're not going to operate in the realm of rebuilding, and we're going to be operating in the realm of what we're going for next season. Is the best pathway to that approach a guy who's never called defensive plays? Is that seriously the best option here that we can possibly do? And to me, and that seems like to you the same way, it's not. And losing Donatel is a big loss. He would have been at the very least, you had a high floor on Donatel as a defensive coordinator, right? The
Right.
cat's doing her thing here. Sorry. You had a high floor on him where you knew at least coming in the door, maybe he doesn't get you to an elite defensive status, but he's not going to be the crap show that you've seen recently where you're giving up record amount of yardage. And Desai got a tremendous amount out of that Chicago Bears crew with not a lot of talent last year, including Khalil Mack, not there for most of the year. Akeem Hicks, not there for most of the year. The Goldman guy was rounding back into shape from taking off from the previous year. He had not a lot, got a lot out of him,
Mhm.
got Robert Quinn's
Yeah.
best year out of him at 33. So I'm 100% with you, man. On that, do you think that this has been a bit of a, they've been caught off guard here a little bit? Does this show a little bit of a lack of planning by the front office and foresight on their part to understand what the lay of the land was going to be here as far as the coaching trees go?
Maybe, but I really do get the sense that they're in love with Clint Hurt for some reason. And I'd
Mhm.
really like to hear what the reason is for deciding that whatever else happens, we can't lose Clint Hurt, because there's not a whole lot on that resume that you can point to say, yeah, that's a guy that I want. The Seahawks defense has not been that good over the last 5 years. The Seahawks defensive line has really not been good for a lot of those seasons. And as I know, Clint Hurt has been the assistant head coach, but what does that mean? What does he do? I don't know.
Yeah.
Does he fetch coffee every morning for Pete Carroll? I don't know. It could just be that. It could be a lot more, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
But
we
go
have to
ahead.
also we have to also admit too that a lot of some of this hire, maybe not all of it, he may be a bright shining star on the rise, but some of this, to your point on what you're talking about here, is the yes man aspect of things, right? That he is coming here to placate to what Carroll wants him to do.
Yeah, there are some people, including a couple guys in my Discord. I got one guy, Mass Temple. He's pretty in tune with a lot of this stuff. He is very adamant that Clint Hurt is not just a yes man, and
Okay.
that may be true. But what I'm going to say is that there will be no Kool-Aid drinking if all you're bringing into 2022 is Clint Hurt and Carl Scott.
Right.
All right, there's no Kool-Aid drinking. I will believe it the moment it actually starts doing well in the season.
Yeah.
Like, there's no getting hyped on that. If you brought in Donatel and Desai, then I'm drinking some of the Kool-Aid. And I know that
Mm-hmm.
sounds like a weird metaphor because it means I'm about
No.
to die, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, without the death part. No, I think it's very apropos. Does the Scott hire get you very excited? Doesn't do anything for me.
Well, there's some pretty good stuff back there. Like, but the thing is, Alabama always churns out great defensive backs. So it's not like you can say that he had some special role there. Alabama's always produced those guys. So it's not like you can say, oh, look what he did with Trayvon Diggs, that, Nick Saban probably would have done the same thing with him anyway. Or look what he did with Patrick Surtain II.
Yeah.
One thing I did like about the Minnesota year was both safeties for the Vikings last year played really well. Harrison Smith got back to the Pro Bowl, and Xavier Woods had 100+ tackles. So they got excellent play out of their safeties.
Hmm.
That caught my eye. But other than that, he's had 1 year in the NFL, and it really wasn't that good.
They were, I think, 25th in the league. The Vikings were last year against the pass.
Sounds about right.
In a division, by the way, where yes, Aaron Rodgers resides there, but you know who else resides there? Jared Goff and a rookie Justin Fields with no offensive line. So to be at 25th, he might have gotten some better safety performance, but I look at that and I go, okay, well that doesn't, again, to use your metaphor, that doesn't make me lift up the Kool-Aid and get the sugar. You know what I mean? That's the thing
Mhm.
that's got me. So he may be great. Hurt may be great. I think my point with it would be just that I would like to see a little bit more established guys being brought in, because we're not in a state of testing waters here. We're not a state of like, let's give it a try, and if it fails, we'll go do something else next year. Or we're in a state of we're trying to go all in supposedly this next year, according to what Carroll's kind of told us. And these moves look more like let them go, navigate their young coaching waters and have their growing pains. And we kind of don't have time a little bit for that, it feels like. And maybe I'm just being a little impatient in my approach with it, but that's just how it feels, at least a little bit.
Yeah, it's just been kind of weird. Like, okay, so clearly with the things that the Seahawks have been trying to do, there's an interest in adapting the Vic Fangio defense because they've already been doing that anyway. Matty F. Brown on Twitter's done a lot of analysis about how the Seahawks defense was morphing into the Fangio defense by the end of the year anyway.
Yes.
And now we're trying to hire all these Fangio guys. But for some reason, and I understand that Hurt is technically a Fangio guy because he spent a little bit of time with Fangio. Where was it? Chicago?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, right. I understand that. But for some reason, we prioritize that more. Honestly, if it continues to go the way that it looks like it's going and we don't get Desai, I'd almost say, okay, if you want to get me back invested again, you got to send Clint Hurt back down to the defensive line coach and actually go hire Fangio, who, as far as I know, is not getting looked at right now for any positions. So he's out there, and there are only a couple open DC spots left in the league. I think the Ravens might still be open because they fired Wink, and maybe one or two other spots, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I could guess the Ravens do make a lot of sense for him to go there, for sure, for him to be that spot. But I'm with you on this. Desai, Fangio, these names get me a lot more excited and hopeful for this defense and being able to rejuvenate it more than going from within. It doesn't establish the confidence and, again, the untested aspect of it. I love your ideas on that, by the way, like realizing, look, we were going to try to get cute with this. We can't get cute with this. Now let's change course. We had an idea, as opposed to just going, okay, first candidate's off. Who's the next guy on our list? Who's that guy? Okay, go get that guy. Call him up. Kind of that. You hope it's not that sort of wayward approach where you truly are at. Do you have is there any other outside the box things with this coaching stuff that strikes you? Or, I mean, from a scale, give me a scale of 1 to 10. We lock in this guy. We lock in whoever guy, no Fangio, no Desai. We're going with that coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball going into the next season. On a scale of 1 to 10, as far as your hope or whatever word you want to use there, as far as what you think this defense is going to be the next season, where would you be at on that scale? And where were you at in that scale at the end of the season?
Oh, I mean, in terms of just this area of the team, it's basically just a 1. I don't see how I could feel any other way about just ending up with Clint Hurt after all this time of thinking, oh, we're going to get Clint Hurt, we're going to get Donatel, and we're going to get Desai.
Yeah.
And then you just end up with Clint Hurt. Like, how can it not be a 1 almost? That's not to say it can't work. But from where we sit right now, where we're months and months and months away from the season starting, how can it be anything other than a 1? Like, Clint Hurt might be great, but there's no evidence or reason to believe that he will be. It's just pure Kool-Aid drinking to say he's going to be great because Pete Carroll thinks he's going to be great. That's really all you can say. And this whole "in Pete we trust" thing has been dead for a little while now. It shouldn't be a consideration anymore.
Yeah, and it's again just hard to guide what is he going to do new idea wise, what's going to be accepted new idea wise. I think I'm with you on it, where there just doesn't draw a lot of excitement. I might be like a 3 because I'm at least hopeful Hurt will be in the room pressing for the upping the defensive line and improving that. And I do think that a lot of the backbone of this defense resides on upping that defensive line and making sure it's a workable crew, and that it can go.
Okay, well, that's true, and it's also true that he probably won't be sending as many defensive linemen into coverage. That's good. But my thing is, the Clint Hurt thing feels like the bare minimum. Like, what could we have done this offseason that was worse than replacing Norton with Hurt? Would keeping Norton have been worse? I guess. Would hiring one of Pete Carroll's sons been worse? Probably. Other than that?
Yeah.
Other than that, like, what's worse than that? I don't know. Again, nothing negative about Clint Hurt. It's just there's no evidence.
Yeah, and I'm still on the low end scale, and I'm probably at a 3, might be giving him a bit too much. I love that you're at a 1 because that should be probably where I am. And this, again, we're hoping for this team to start to get a little bit bigger in his swings, get a little less conservative in his approach, get a little less predictable, both on the field and off the field, and how they're going about their business in the hopes of improving on things that have been a little bit broken so far. We touched we've touched recently pretty heavily on the free agents that are available. We looked at the front end guys, we've looked at the back end guys, and in order of importance and all that. A place that we didn't dive as much into recently, Brendon, here has been the trade market that could presumably open up this off season. And it's always a market where you can usually dive into and get some pretty decent guys, because teams will trade guys, not because of situations of them being bad players, but in a lot of cases because they don't have the cap space, or they need draft picks, or it's just they don't want to sign the player to a contract extension, and all the reasons that go with that. I think that there's some guys on that list this year that could be very interesting for our Seahawks, and where we're sort of targeting them. I think you've got a couple guys out the gate that are really interesting that we got to put into worthy discussion, because we both, I think, basically share the top two guys. That these are the guys that I'll read a list real quickly here, Brendon, of just the guys I assembled as far as possibilities, and we can kind of tuck into a couple of these. But then I'm going to have you just kind of bleed off of these two, because we are in agreement of like mind on who these two guys that we probably put at the top of our board in targeting versus the rest of these names that are available. Just going to read them quickly. You got Jalen Reagor, Frank Clark, Taylor Lewan, possibly, Matt Ioannidis, Stephon Tuitt, Danielle Hunter, Chris Lindstrom, James Bradbury, Mitch Morris, Tyron Smith, Mari Cooper, DeMarcus Lawrence, Zadarius Smith, Michael Thomas, and that's basically my list, Brendon. And you've got two other names on that. Who are the two guys I didn't mention that are both our primos, if we can get them?
Well, I would start out by saying, did you say Davenport in that list?
I left R2 off.
Yeah, Marcus Davenport, because I was looking at the Saints, because their cap books right now are like a work of art. Their salary cap books right now, like, go take a look at that, because their current salary cap situation will go down in history. I want to make an NFT of the Saints' current salary cap books. Okay, it will sell for almost as much as they are over the cap right now.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, you stole my joke. Oh, they've been doing the upper double twist, tuck your knees, roll with the cap now, and it's really, this year is just, it's mind blowing to look at. Absolutely mind blowing.
Right. So obviously some of the buzz lately has been about Alvin Kamara, which I really didn't want any part of. And it looks like now the decision has been made for us, because he partied a little too early after the Pro Bowl.
Whew.
Yeah. And apparently, well, from what I've heard, it doesn't look good for him at all. But either way, I'm not in on the Kamara stuff. I already made my video about that. But there is one guy on the Saints that really, really sticks out to me, Marcus Davenport. He's he's kind of clowny-ish, and I know that sounds like I'm insulting him, but he's got a little clowny in him, in that he generates a lot of pressure, but sometimes struggles to actually pile up big sack numbers. He's not somebody who's ever going to get 20 sacks, but he is very good, and the Saints need to trade him, because cutting him does not do anything. If they trade him, then they have very little dead cap for 2022. And those are the kinds of trades that they have to make. So because of that, they're not going to ask for the moon in order to acquire him. You can maybe just get away with giving them, I don't know, a 4th round pick and a 5th round pick. They might be okay with that, because they're just trying to save money. So I think Marcus Davenport would be my chief guy. A couple of Seahawks beat writers have already been kind of circling around him a little bit. So that's probably my main guy. The other guy is a guy who is already apparently in trade talks. Already apparently the team that has him, they're already fielding calls, and that is Grady Jarrett.
Oh, yeah.
So he has not played well lately, but a lot of that might be because Dan Quinn left Atlanta, and Grady Jarrett needs to be in a different kind of system. We talked a little bit about that last time we did a show.
Yeah.
And Atlanta needs to get under the cap. Their prospects for 2022 don't look very good. So they might just be trying to say, okay, if you take on Grady Jarrett's contract, we will part with him for, it could be a 4th round pick. It could be about that level again. So those are two guys who I think could really round out the defensive line.
I was doing to research to make sure I was right about what we were talking about last week, and indeed it was the case that they transitioned to a 3-4 defense when Quinn left, which put Grady into more of a nose slash maybe they kicked him out to defensive end at times. So his one sack production this year for Seahawks fans, for people looking at him and going, well, now he's falling off, he's getting older, he's not the same. Well, no, he was put in at, this is what I always say. There's those guys that are 3-4 guys, and there's guys that are 4-3 guys. There's guys that are zone guys, and there's guys that are man-on-man guys. And that you've got to differentiate in the player you're looking at so that if they are playing out of position, that's when you can go snatch and grab them. That's when you can pick up a guy and who's a depressed asset at that point. And again, to your point on this, I think Atlanta's going to try to go for it next year in the realm of they're going to try to build this roster up to be good enough to win that division. And they have a puncher's chance at it because nobody else has a great quarterback situation within the division, and Saints with their own aging roster, and the Panthers and Buccaneers. He'd be really interesting as a 3-tech here, and a guy that you might be able to get a lot back out of him now in a scheme that fits him perfectly. Would just fit Grady to it. I mean, that's what he ran Brendon with Quinn, right? He was the 3-tech and the 4-3 under for Quinn's defense. So fantastic. I was watching some Davenport tape. You'd have him as your Leo. They'd be putting him over there. That's basically the worst. The Saints had him time and time again. Did a little bit of stand-up stuff. Did a little bit of stuff with his hand in the dirt. Man, it was a perfect comparison on your part as far as Clowney goes. That same sort of doesn't have a refined swim move or hump move or over move, right? He just kind of bully balls the tackle into the backfield. And then when he disengage, he has a really nice burst off disengaging off the block where he suddenly has it's almost like a little lightning quick for a guy that size and can really kind of eat up and get up on top of a quarterback quick in that realm. One little question to worry with Davenport, and the other thing that I think to your point would help with his trade value on this, where you might not have to get to even the 3rd round range, is that he has missed time all 4 of his first 4 years in the league. So the injury situation with him is a little bit of a part of that to consider with that, which every single year in 4 seasons, but still a young player, still a guy with, you would think, a lot of tread on the tires to go out there and get something done. But right. I think we both like these 2 trades versus the other things is that if you go through this list of these other guys, everybody's got some pretty big questions with them when you look at, Frank Clark off the field and what is his production is at? Does he still want to even play against the run now? Right. Like if you're measuring up against these 2 guys and we're looking like, what would make you say on these guys over, let's say, DeMarcus Lawrence or Amari Cooper?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why these guys are going to be available is that they are imperfect, right? If they were perfect, if they were completely healthy, if they were amazing, their on the field production, their teams would probably move heaven and earth to keep them. The fact that they're imperfect is why they're free in the first place. It's pretty rare you see a perfect player or some all-time great player or anything like that shake free. Their teams wouldn't let them go. Now, sometimes you get a situation like what the Saints are doing right now, where even if they had a player who was, essentially perfect for them and had no real issues, they'd still have to get rid of him because there's just no money. But most of the time, these players are being let go for a reason. And a lot of the times that reason is money, but there's usually a little bit of, he's injury prone, or how good is he really? That kind of stuff is baked in. So I'm willing to live with that. You got to be willing to take on some risk here.
And both of these guys, when you move them up against guys like Cooper or Lawrence, the other guys, they're carrying the salary or a little bit older. These guys are still relatively young, pure scheme fit. You're able to jump from. The cost is not going to be tremendous. You might have to do a contract extension with 1 or 2 of them if you bring them in and restructure it to get their number right for that first year cap hit. But maybe not. Maybe you just roll with both of them and let them ride. But I looking at these versus the other pass rushers, it gets me excited. I think I would put, honestly, Brendon, even though Davenport might be the younger player and just starting to round a little bit more into shape as a player, I might put more of an onus to Jarrett if I had to put between one or the other, being that when I look at the 3-tech defensive tackle position in the NFL right now, it's hard to find those guys. Hard to find guy. I'm not talking about Donalds. I'm not talking about Chris Jones. I'm just talking about a relatively above average 3-tech defensive tackle. They don't come along very often.
Yeah. To me, that is the main area that needs to be addressed. I've said it before. I know you don't totally agree, but I'm not unhappy with where we are at Leo right now. Daryl
Mhm.
Taylor is going to be the guy. You still got Dunlap. I don't think he's going anywhere, and he did end the year on fire. And I know it was against Jermaine Ifedi. It was against, I think, the Rams' third string right tackle or whoever that was. But he did play genuinely well. I think he played well in the Cardinals game too, and
Yeah.
he was going up against a starting offensive lineman in that game, I believe. So to me, the Leo spot is not really where we need to fix this. It's the 5 tech and the 3 tech. We need to get more pressure out of those spots.
Agreed. And my thing with Daryl is I do like him with the Leo. It's just that thinking that soundbite he gave when he came off the field in Indianapolis, where it's like, yeah, I'm good off the right side, but I'm a monster off the left. And it's like, well, if a guy thinks he's a monster off one side or the other, which isn't the Leo side, do you eventually just get him into his natural side over there and let him go? And Dunlap, God bless him, just doesn't have the athletic profile of a Leo. And so then you're left with, okay, can Allen Robinson round into that? I mean, he's got a little bit of some of those traits, but do you need a little bit? Do you need a little bit more? But would you be that way then? You would say Jarrett for you would be, if you have to make the choice between the two, you do go Jarrett over the top of Davenport.
Yeah, I think so, because I think there's more of a pressing need there. And like you said, maybe the 5 tech solution is actually in-house. You move one of those guys over. Maybe that is the solution. If so, then that changes the equation for this offseason significantly. So yeah, Grady Jarrett would be the target. By the way, I looked it up. The Falcons save $16.5 million if they move off Grady this offseason.
Yeah. And they're pumped. They're pushed near the cap, right? What's their caps? What are they at right now?
They are over the cap by like 8 million. Let me check this out here real quick. Yeah, they are over the cap by 6 million actually.
Okay, so they trade him for 16, which gets it gets them basically 8 million over the cap, which basically then takes care of their first round picks, practice squad guys, and injury designation players for the upcoming season, which is going to look like no surprise that they have in trade talks right now with him, and that's ongoing here because of that reason alone. That's the one move they then have to make, and then off that move they can build everything back else around to get themselves into, quote unquote, I don't believe it, but they're going to try to talk themselves in with Matt Ryan carrying a $45 million cap hit next year. 48. Sorry. That's
it's insane.
That is an insane contract. Well, that's, they're going to try. They're going to give it a shot. If I give you, I'm going to give you one more name. Okay. We're going to play Fantasy Island here a little bit, Brendon. The bus, the plane. I'm going to give you one more. Brendon, and I'm not even going to give you caveats. Okay. No caveats. Okay. I'm going to give you some names. I'm going to get realistic here. So I'm going to remove a couple of my guys here as I'm looking through this here that you don't get a touch. We get one of two of Davenport and Jarrett. Let's say we get one of these other guys. And I guess it matters. Let's call it Jarrett because we're both prioritizing Jarrett. So that's your guy you got of those two. We got Clark, Ioannidis, Stephon Tuitt, Danielle Hunter, James Bradbury, Tyron Smith, Amari Cooper, Zadarius Smith, or Michael Thomas. Is there, if you have an option to either A, go and pick one of those guys up and trade, like there's some way a draft capital, maybe they go for it and they do future draft picks, not in this upcoming draft, but future draft picks, right? Would you look to maybe make a trade for any of these other guys, or instead I'm putting that money to free agency?
Well, I would definitely remove the receivers from the equation, Amari Cooper and who was the other wide receiver you said? It was Amari Cooper and Michael Thomas. Yeah, I would definitely tap out on those guys because I just don't see the need. Doesn't Tuitt play in a 3-4 defense?
He does. He does a little more penetrating than you usually get out of those defensive linemen down there. So yeah, you're right. But you're right. Point would still stand that, he might not be as much a scheme fit.
Yeah, Tyron Smith has played like 10 games over the last 2 years combined. So I'm that's approaching like just go get Dwayne Brown back at this point territory.
Same. Yeah, absolutely the same. I think, and if you look at the last 4 years, he's been like, that was one of those things that's by the way, just a notable thing, because Brendon, they were ahead of this, and I thought the Cowboys were kind of trying to be a trendsetter on this. They originally signed Tyron Smith to a 10-year deal. Do you remember this back in the day? He was one of the first guys that they signed to that big, long deal. And you went, man, Why would Tyron do that with like he's not going to be able to go back to the stock and hit another contract. He's just sitting on this one
Mm.
now. He sat on the one through his whole career, but what he's done on the other end of that is there's been a little milking of ankle's a bit dodgy this week, coach. Shoulders a little out this week. He doesn't get a full season in at any point in time. What about Danielle Hunter? Because you've gotten Jarrett on the other side.
Yeah, Danielle Hunter would be one of the chief candidates for me, although he has his own injury concerns to be wary of. But you got to take risks here at some point, right? Like you're never, there's no path of no resistance here. So Danielle Hunter would definitely be near the top of my list there.
Yeah.
Zadarius Smith, possibly. Yeah, I don't know exactly where he would fit in on this defense, but I like that idea.
I think checked. He carries a $15 million cap hit next year.
Yeah,
that's post trade. That's post trade.
Yeah, that eats up a lot of it. But if he's good, then it's worth it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I know you said Taylor Lewan. I don't hate that. Yeah. Again, pretty expensive, but I think he's still good. Mm-hmm. Probably going to be better than Dwayne Brown will be. I also really like the idea of Mitch Morse. I think he might be a solid center here if you feel like you can't get that solid center anywhere else. Now, I think you probably should be able to find a good center in free agency. I don't think you need to trade for him.
Mm-hmm.
But if for some reason you just feel like the right center isn't out there, you could trade for Mitch Morse. I don't mind that idea.
I'd be good with it.
Yeah. Everything else I'm more kind of lukewarm on. Like DeMarcus Lawrence would be all right, but I'm not willing to pay him all that money. Like he would have to be somebody that gets cut and then you pick him up. I wouldn't be willing to trade for him, I don't think.
He's at a $19 million base for next year that you're paying, even after the Cowboys swallow up the base on a trade.
Right.
It's just that's too expensive. I like the Mitch Morse one. And Lewan I'd be with too if you can pluck him. I still wonder how the Titans are going to pull it off with where they're facing on their cap. They got Harold Landry's a free agent. They have Jeffrey Simmons, their monster in the middle there, who's due a big time contract. AJ Brown's going to be paid $20 million a year probably. Do you have the money to now put Lewan on a $19 million per deal on 3-4 year? I wonder if they might not go. Yeah. I don't know.
By the way, the base salary for Mitchell Morse in 2022 is less than $7 million. So that's actually pretty reasonable.
I think you're going to have to get him a contract extension though, because that's what would to me maybe push Buffalo to move him, because Buffalo's entering into the Josh Allen contract where it's starting to hurt now a little bit, like the pain's coming in, and that's where now we have a player A like Max Unger, right, who's on our roster and it's a center, and we don't want to be paying him on a contract extension versus left tackle, right tackle, whatever, and so maybe that kind of pushes the trade to then happen for him, because I'm hopeful. I'd be very ecstatic to bring in Morse. He'd be a really good addition. I think I like Jensen too. I'm worried with a little bit with Kelsey and the age factor, though. He'd be a pure fit, but Morse would be definitely a home run, I think, if you were able to add him.
Yeah, and by the way, extending him's not the worst thing in the world. You can take the cap hit in 2022 down.
Yeah,
significantly.
Yeah, absolutely significantly. Like what was I saying here? I have the number here. So you had with and I based it off, of course, Lindsley's deal. Last year's Lindsley's deal, they had at a $6.6 million cap hit for his 5 year, $62 million. I don't know if the same deal would be in place for Morse if he's considered the same player. It's not a free agent contract you're giving Morse at this point. You do have club control, so the leverage game does still hold to the team at that point, which probably allows you to get the cap hit down to like 5.5, because he's not going to get quite what Lindsley did as a pure free agent on the open market, go to the highest bidder. But I love it. I love that.
Yeah. That would probably be at the top of my list, along with the defensive ends we were talking about, because we do need to address this pass rush.
100%. And two guys who I don't think are going to come up. Again, these are outliers we've talked a little bit about before. One of them is my dream candidate. Like this would be like, I'd wake up and think I'm in an alternate universe, we talk about Andrew Norwell, the Jags. I don't know where they're going to be at. They're probably not giving up linemen at this point with Lawrence. It's a pipe dream big time, but he would be an amazing left guard to add to this team. And then Chris Lindstrom of the Falcons, who I think is also up for a contract. And again, even if you do that post trade with Jarrett, it's not like you're going to be able to put a lot of money into your own guys if you've got guys due for pretty big contracts coming up. So it'd be interesting to see with those two guys, kind of what happens with them. They'll probably just get big contracts with their own teams. but
Mhm.
still interesting if they popped up.
Yeah, definitely. And as a GM, you should be in on every single trade that happens, even if it's a player you have very little interest in.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that's your job. So
I do like the fact that even though they're not aggressive in it, I don't doubt that the whole point of them saying Snyder saying we're in on every deal, we don't pull. I think they are listening. I just think sometimes they don't have a line that's willing to go as high as it needs to go. They hit their line very quickly of where we will not go past on the assets we're willing to give up, and then they're suddenly out. But technically, they were listening in on the deal, right? Technically, they're there. Is there any other guys we haven't mentioned on this list? I know it's pretty. There's not a lot. I don't know if you saw the same thing in your kind of research on this, but it didn't feel like there was a lot of, despite there being about 5, 6 teams over the cap. There didn't feel like a lot of teams that were necessarily in situations of having to move this guy or having to move that guy. It's a lot of situations like what you talked about the Saints, right? Where Cam Jordan's carrying this big base and they don't save a lot of money by moving off of him, or Fletcher Cox with the Eagles where it's, oh my goodness, the bonus money's through the roof. There's a lot of those type of situations, right? Which just, it does kind of thin out the little bit of the field as far as trade possibilities are going.
yeah, it does. But why would the Saints convert a bunch of base to bonus? They're not going to win anything in 2022. They just lost their head coach. They don't have a quarterback. And I mean that pretty much literally because Jameis Winston's a free agent. Their best quarterback right now is probably Taysom Hill. So why would you kick the can down the road again? Just take the can. Just let the can kick you this time. So I do think they're going to have to make some pretty big moves. But you're right. The moves they can make are somewhat limited. They can't move off of like Marshawn Lattimore because there's so much dead money there. They can't move off of they may have just been bailed out with the Kamara thing because Kamara's contract may very well be voided now. It almost makes me wonder if he got bribed to take a fall in Vegas over the weekend. Makes you wonder.
That's interesting. I forgot about the
Yeah.
fact that it can be voided, huh? Just not suspended,
I
but completely voided.
I would assume so. If he goes to prison, then I think they're going to say. I mean, Monta
Yeah.
Ellis had. Do you remember Monta Ellis in basketball?
Yeah.
He signed a $70 million contract, and it got wiped out because he rode around on a moped and tore up his ACL. So
Yeah.
they were if you get seriously injured outside of the sport on doing something that was entirely avoidable, then yeah, you lose your contract. So
Not
I
only that,
don't
he might
think
have to give
so.
up. He might have to give back bonus money at that
Yeah,
point. If that's the
maybe.
other side of that. That'd work really well in their favor. I agree with you. The Saints should do that. I don't know if it'll stop, if they necessarily will do that. They may, because they've just been a team so aggressive in that state for so long now. I don't know if they know how to go down to second gear. Everything is like, let's go. Pedal down to the metal. But they should. You're right. This is the year to do it. You don't have the quarterback. Just take it down. As I like to say, take it to the studs. It's the best thing you do in football. When it's not ready, it's not right. It's not there. Aging roster. Take it down to the studs on that. Darius Slay get you interested at all? Darius Slay, James
I'm
Bradbury.
just I'm not into spending a lot of money on cornerback is the thing. Like to me, if you're gonna do that, just bring back DJ Reed. You already know he's good for you.
Yeah.
Don't go get somebody who might be Kerry Williams. I think ironically that's maybe one of the biggest free agent contracts Pete has ever uh given out to somebody. It was Kerry Williams.
Nice. That's legit. That is legit. I think they gave him more, at least in it was a multi-year deal. They've only given out, I think, 1-year deals to other cornerbacks when they have signed them in free agency. So yeah, they got, and it's, look, we can agree. I'm with you. Don't bring in guys from the outside. Don't bring in guys with big bases. Get by with the lesser on the cornerback so you can invest in places like what we're advocating for, like the
Yeah.
3-tech or defensive end. That'd be much better. Well, let's draw this forward a little bit. And I know this is a subject both you and I have a little of Wilson Lash at this point. It's been a long talking of this stuff for over a year. We've had to do a lot on each of our channels and going every which way on this and people's sensitivity to the subject matter and all that. But we do have to talk about it because it's as I like to say, winter is coming here. The season of Wilson rumors are coming. We're going to get a month and a half nonstop of this team proposal, that team proposal. Have you seen some of the laughable trade offers that have been posted online by some of these sites? So for like, even
Oh,
including ESPN,
yeah.
by the way, like,
Yeah. I mean, there's been some garbage thrown around.
I just laugh. It's just, they're awful trades. It's, again, I think you agree. The beginning point's 3 first-round picks. I don't want to trade them, by the way. I don't think Brendon's in the same place. We're not advocating for trading, but again, these rumors are here. We have to discuss this a little bit. The beginning spot though is 3 first-round picks, right, Brendon? This is where we're
Yeah,
starting, and then
something like that. Yeah.
it
And
goes from
remember, one thing though, not all first rounder picks are created equal.
no. It's true.
If you get 3 first round picks in this draft from Philly, that's different than first rounder, first rounder, first rounder over the next 3 years. That's very different.
Right. Which is my theory on it, is if you're going to the whichever team that just has like Washington, 1 first round pick, and they give you the 3 first round picks, I think you are getting another pick and a player then. Versus to what you're saying, if it's 3 first round picks in this draft, that might just be all you get, but it's in this draft. So I think there's still. Do you remain on the line of this? Is that we still have no idea what's going to happen on this? It is still a 50-50 situation, a fluid situation, and we're just going to have to sit back and sort of hold the cheeks as this thing plays out.
I don't think he's going to get traded, because in order for him to get traded, everybody kind of has to be on board with it, right? Russ has to want to trade. Pete has to want to trade. I guess Schneider and Jody Allen would have to sign off on the trade too. Too many people would need to say, yeah, let's do it. And then you need another team to come in with an offer that's good enough, because even if this team wanted to trade Wilson, you can't tell me that he's so toxic they would give him away like a Percy Harvin. No, they would need a team to match what their expectations are, or you're not getting him.
Yeah, the Chicago passing of the offer last year proved that it's you gotta bring your deal here. Well, I've got one more question on Wilson. We got a little donation here, so let's get this. Charles Riley, $5 donation. Thank you, Charles. Appreciate you. It says, Charles, what do you cats think about the Ben Simmons for Harden trade today? Philly gave up a haul. Hopefully, Harden is motivated. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I mean, I don't like James Harden, so I don't care if he's motivated or not. But I think it's a good trade for both teams, especially if Simmons gets over whatever it is that was keeping him off the court. I think it probably helps both teams. They needed to do something. Both teams had to mix it up somehow. And I'm more interested now in seeing those teams in the playoffs than I was before, I think. So I'm good for it.
Yeah, I think Harden was kind of done there where he was at. So he was going to, when Harden checks out on you, you don't want to keep him there. So to get what you can get for a guy that was probably on his, being like, I'm about done here. Ben Simmons still does have a lot of upside, and certainly his penetration to KD on the outside to be able to hit him for those threes open. You think he'd be able to get a lot of those looks where teams are not going to want to leave KD and open that lane a little bit more versus the congestion he dealt with Embiid. So I think it's a win-win. Don't you?
Yeah.
It's that's a win-win trade.
Yeah, it had to be done.
Had to be done. Randall McDaniel, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you, my guy. Randall also with some interesting information today. Texted me on this, Brendon. I didn't know if you were aware of this. Did you know that Paul Allen had to sign an agreement when he got the new stadium in play, got the funds for the stadium from the city, to not sell the team, I believe, before 2025? Little tidbit that Brock Heward gave up on the show today here with
I did not know that.
on the deal. I did not. I thought you'd like that little tidbit. So a little bit maybe of an interesting kind of turn there as to why maybe we've thought, does she really want to own this team? Does she not? Why haven't we heard more rumors about even a potential sale with this if she does not? Maybe this explains a little bit more as to why we haven't seen that. Thank you for that little tidbit, though, Randall, on that. And
yeah, can't these people just build the stadiums themselves? Like, Paul Allen could have afforded that stadium.
Well, he kicked in like already 150. Like, what was another extra 100 million to where you have the freedom of you own it now? You ain't leasing nothing. Like, that's the thing. You got to lease it to the city. You're paying that cost to it every year. At least you think maybe that's removed if it's in your name and you own it and you got the ground, lock, stock, and barrel. But these owners, if they can get the city to pay, they'll get the city to pay, I guess. It's it is what it is. Randall, thank you for the $5 donation. It says, does Eskridge carry any value in a trade package? 3 years club control and a rookie deal, especially for cash-strapped Saints. He had a very interesting trade proposal on this one that he brought up in my chat the other day. And thank you, Randall, for the $5 donation. But I think it's worthy of putting out there for you, Brendon. You've got Eskridge here, which rough little first year for him, though he showed signs of being kind of the player you thought you were maybe hoping to get in the second round. We're talking about Marcus Davenport. We're talking about Schneider already down a first round pick. Maybe he don't want to be down more picks in this draft. Maybe he's done dealing with a lesser deck. If I call you tomorrow and your general manager, Brendon Nelson, on the phone, I said, Brendon, hey, Saints general manager, we like Eskridge. We don't have any receivers on the outside. We're about to trade Michael Thomas. We'll flip you Eskridge for Davenport straight up.
Yeah, I think I would do that, The additional salary hurts, but I think it would probably be worth it. I think Davenport carries a lot more value to this team than Eskridge. Not that I'm enamored with these guys anymore because they haven't done anything yet. I do like some of our young receiver talent guys. Like, I still have a thing for Aaron Fuller. Still always really been enthusiastic by seeing that guy on the field, hopefully one day. And Cade Johnson, too.
Can Aaron Fuller play on the outside?
Well, no, almost certainly not. I think Aaron Fuller kind of plays like maybe like a Doug Baldwin, but I don't think he can play on the outside. No.
If it comes down to where it's a Cade Johnson or Aaron Fuller, who do you think separates himself on that? Because as you look at this team,
yeah.
I mean, it's just the acknowledgement you got right now. The team obviously they like Penny Hart quite a bit. They like obviously Eskridge. You got Lockett who can play some slot stuff. So that gets you 3 slot deep, which is a great rock band name, by the way. What would you? Who do you think? I mean, they didn't, and maybe they don't have to make this decision, Brendon, because you got the 16-man practice squad, so you don't have to. But I've heard people brought up Aaron Fuller in my chat before too, as being fairly excited about him as well. And he had a great preseason. I mean, everything they threw, he caught right in the preseason. So, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I feel like Cade, I liked his college tape a little bit more. Found him to be a little more explosive, a little more ability, but I don't know.
Well, to me, I do kind of have a philosophy where if a player doesn't show something after a few years, there's probably a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it kind of goes back to the old John Ursua stuff, where I would have people back in 2019 and even 2020 and some even last year talking about John Ursua, and I'm like, this guy has 1 catch. We have had some teams with very weak receiver cores while he's been here. We've had injury problems at the receiver position, and he still can't get on the field. Like, what more do you need to see that this guy isn't anything?
Yeah.
So I look at Fuller and I do go, why can't he get on the field yet?
Yeah.
And there could be legitimate reasons why. I mean, this is the same team that tried to play Puna Ford at 3-tech for a whole year. So who knows?
I was going to say that's the rule of thumb you're talking about is the true. Sorry to interrupt you, but the rule of thumb you're saying about is true with the, that they generally, if they're not on the field, they should have been. But then we got Phil Haynes too. Sorry to throw his deer thunder on that, but that's another guy where, well, wait, this guy got in the doghouse and supposedly he couldn't go and you couldn't get him off the practice squad, but then he gets out there and he balls out when you put him on the field.
Yeah. However, I'm looking at a guy like Cade and I'm saying, okay, he's only been here a year. And during that year, we were pretty set at receiver. Like, he was not really ever going to get on the field. No chance, because we were too good at receiver.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at Cade and going, he probably has more upside. I will acknowledge that.
Yeah. But Fuller's been, you can only do with the opportunities you're given. And I remember in preseason, everything they threw to him, and he had some tough catches where guys were hanging off of him. And he made the catches. He looked good in his route running. He looked bigger than his college tape actually too. So I don't know if he's added some good weight on him as well, but it'll be interesting. What's nice is you have a good competitive room there right now. On top of it, wouldn't be bad to add a guy if you can add a guy, but it's a competitive room at least. You got some guys fighting out along with the top end guys, and it's not the problem on this team right now. I've got to apologize for this. Thank you for the $5 donation on this, Charles. So you'll have to hear the backstory on this. I appreciate you. He says, Brendon, are you open to having guest appearances in the jacuzzi for after dark Hawk chats?
It's a 2-person jacuzzi, so there's not a whole lot of room for social distancing. So that's probably not going to fly.
So last night, the backstory on this is that we got midway through the chat. People started getting really obsessed with, hey, are you going to get on? You're going to be doing a hot tub stream with Brendon? Like, where is this coming from, guys? And then everybody started running with it. As you can see, Randall does behind him saying, Brendon gone wild. So it went from us in a hot tub to us in a hot tub with Katie Nolan to us in a hot tub with Katie Nolan and Instagram models. It was getting kind of deep yesterday on that chat. It was getting a little sideways on my stream yesterday. I'm not going to lie with that.
Yeah, that's because sometimes I stream from the hot tub here.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
But they were just,
that's where that stems from.
they were on it. They were like, you got to get in it. Got to do the stream.
Yeah. And to be clear, I kind of do it as a joke because I don't know if you've ever seen on Twitch these, I guess you could kind of call them Instagram models who just stream from a hot tub and the donations just fly in constantly the whole night. So I was like, I got to get in on this. I got to get in on this hot tub streaming money. Hasn't worked out great for me yet, by the way.
I thought you were going to use a 4-letter word that started with TH.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's your channel, man. I don't want to get you in trouble.
Oh, it's funny. It's funny. Byron, and thank you, Randall and Charles, for the donations. We're not going to be doing any hot tub streams, as I said last night, though. So unfortunately, we're going to have to put that one on layaway.
Mhm.
Byron with the $2 donation says, any free agents y'all think we'd push for? Well, go ahead and attack this one real quick, Brendon. Of course, I'll say, Byron, we just did a real expansive of the last two shows. I did one on Brendon's channel, and we did my last show here with Brendon, where we went free agent unit by free agent unit, lock by lock, and broke down who would be the guys that we would look to target. But I guess just if you could, Brendon, give them a general top of your list guys, just doesn't be 10, 15 guys, but just maybe a couple guys that are your top dudes.
Okay. I would say Teron Armstead, Jason Kelsey, Ryan Jensen, Jadeveon Clowney, the Bengals defensive tackle, I can't pronounce his name.
You have to pronounce him if you mention him. I got to get at least an attempt.
Ojan Bwehi, but he's not going to leave there anyway, so it doesn't matter.
No.
If we lose DJ Reed, then maybe Xavier Rhodes. If we lose Quandre Diggs, maybe McCourty. And if we cut Jason Myers, which hopefully does happen, then Zane Gonzalez, I think, is actually the free agent kicker I kind of like.
Byron, he even gave you a kicker free agent. He even went deep. I can't add any names that Brendon just did. Those were pretty much my top guys that he mentioned off my board as well, in the order that he just put them down in. The Devin McCourty one, I think, is very brilliant in itself, because that's one where you lose Quandre. You don't want to spend the money for a Marcus Williams or an Anthony Harris. Go to Devin McCourty. Maybe you're paying him about what you're paying in the first year of contract, but it's only a 1 year deal because he's a little bit of an older cat. And there's been guys in the past, Brendon, who've done good as free agents that have been older, not free agents, but free safeties that have still been able to play pretty good even as they get older. Oh, yeah. There's been a couple of those guys that have come down the pike that have hung on in there. So thank you, Byron, for the donation, though. Very, very kind of you. I had one other question for you on this Russell Wilson thing, Brendon, which was, could Russell Wilson not, if his intention is to stay here, could he not at this point in time right now just come down and lay the hammer down and say, this is not happening? I don't care if Seattle wants me here or not. I intend to stay. I'm a Seahawk. I'm under contract. I have a no trade clause. Don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah, he certainly could. And I'll say this. I really don't care for a lot of the clickbait stuff that has happened and is going to happen with Wilson. Like when Ian Rappaport does a report that says Russell Wilson wants to understand his options this offseason. Who in the world doesn't want to understand their options at any point? Like, everybody in the world wants to understand their options at all points in their life. Has there ever been one point in your life where you didn't want to know what your options were? So that doesn't mean anything. I don't like that. And there's going to be a lot of stuff said that is that kind of clickbait stuff, but I'll admit this much. With the way Wilson is talking right now, I think you could make a legitimate argument that he wants to get traded, but he won't ask for it because he doesn't want to be the bad guy. Yeah. Because the way he's saying things, he could be committing a lot more than he is. Even if he doesn't want to go all the way and say, hey, I'm staying no matter what. I don't want to get traded. He could say, I'm here to win. I'm under contract. I'm going to continue. I want to stay here, et cetera, et cetera. He's not even saying that. He's saying like, well, we'll see what happens. I can't remember what the exact quote was, but it was very, very wishy-washy. And I do think that even if he doesn't mean it, like just lie. It's okay. People lie all the time, especially in sports, especially when it comes to contract stuff like this. Just come out and say, no, I want to be here, because you are here for the time being. I do find it suspicious that he won't come out and just say, yeah, I'm here. Instead, he's sticking with these very wishy-washy statements.
And the wishy-washy statements fall in line with the I want to explore my options stuff, right? I mean, those do kind of go together at that point, where it's like, well, if you were wanting to explore your options beyond, and what you're meaning is right, yeah, everybody wants to explore their options, but that he's like actively playing footsies with teams, right? Like, what do you think, New York? You like Russell Wilson? There's like a little bit of that, and maybe he's trying to see how much there's a little bit of generating of interest potentially, and not putting your foot down and saying, nope, these are dead. These didn't need to happen. It's not going to occur. I'm with you. I'm tiresome on the clickbait. I think you're in agreement with me on that. Not, most of hard for me to see pretty much any of these clickbait articles that have come out since the end of the season, and really felt like there was anything being fed from a player's agent downward to me, or from the team out to these guys. That these guys seem to be somewhat pulling this out of thin air right now, trying to just drive these articles. Would you feel that way too?
Yeah, yeah. And if you look at a lot of the articles, they're worded in a way that they can say they were right no matter what happens. They
Yeah.
don't say, "Oh, Wilson is going to get traded here." That way, they might actually be wrong. They always say things like Wilson would consider a trade to here, which, I mean, what does that mean? How can
Mm-hmm.
that be proven wrong? It can't be proven wrong. No matter what happens, you can say, "Hey, that story I published, it's true. It's true. He considered it. He just didn't do it." Like you can't disprove that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't buy into a lot of that stuff, but I will say that the way Wilson is speaking about this right now is giving them some ammo to work with. And maybe there are some justifiable reasons for that. Maybe he is frustrated with the fact that Pete's still here. Maybe he wishes that wasn't the case. Maybe he's a little frustrated by some of the signs that he's gotten for this upcoming offseason.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the case, then honestly, come out and say you want to get traded, because I kind of feel like he's basically saying it without actually saying it. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I agree with you. He's very sensitive how he's looked at publicly, and he's not going to want to be that bad guy. I think that could be driving as much of this, but yet still wanting to actively make sure, hey, I was subtly doing this last offseason. Now we're going to put the pressure down just a little bit harder
Hmm.
this offseason. But again, it's not his fault on these articles coming out. They are out there what they are. And if he doesn't want to say anything about it, maybe he's just tired of talking about it too. Maybe he's like, look, I got asked about it during the year. It's already come up a bunch. I've talked about it a bunch this last year. Pro Bowl just got done. The end of the season's got done. I'm away from football. I'm out of this. It could be that too. Absolutely could be that. But it'll be interesting to see more. And Brendon, it's going to be unfortunate. You agree as well. Next 2 months is just begin nothing but more of these clickbait articles, true or not. They're going to come down like an avalanche upon our heads, aren't they? I mean, it's from every
Oh
different
yeah.
angle.
And we as fans got to be ready for it. You got to be willing to understand that you're going to see a lot of stuff that doesn't have any merit. So
Mm-hmm.
just everybody in chat, be ready for it. It's coming.
Yeah. And throw it away until we've got something that's tangible. As Brendon said, these are all ambiguously written articles. Don't fall into their trappings. It's until they give you some meat on the bone. It's BS. One more we got to Charles Riley, another $5 donation says, Brendo's jacuzzi streams are the sexiest streams on the web. I've learned a lot about seduction, not to mention the great hawk info he relays. Well, you're a double threat guy there in that hot tub, Brendon. Double threat
Yeah.
guy there.
Yeah. I got to use it a few more times before it starts to get too hot, because everyone knows the jacuzzi only hits hard when it's cold out. Like you use it
Oh,
late at
yeah.
night. Like it's great. It's great.
Oh, yeah. You do it
But
in the summer and you just get dehydrated and pass out as soon as you get out of it in the summertime.
right.
Well, I wanted to go with as we kind of wrap into some final things here. I wanted to go into more of a question that's in a general point, and I want to drive it forward to again this off season and the future of this team in the next couple of years, as far as what this team needs to do, understanding this lay of the land and what this reality is. When you look within this division, which once again, this division for at least the third straight season was the best division in football. And that's just personal opinion in my part, but I think everybody pretty much within the NFC West, it doesn't matter what city you're in, would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
It shows no signs of stopping. Can't stop me now. Ain't no slowing me down. I mean, yes, the Rams are over the cap a little bit, but they're going to finagle their way through. Cardinals may find Kyler Murray. If Kyler Murray goes petulant goblin or whatever, we're going to be in about better shape, because that'll set at least that maybe one of the franchises in a weird state, but they're still good as they go forward right now as we stand. And then you got the Niners looming as maybe, to me, the scariest of these three teams as we go into the future. What do you think about where the future of this division's going, versus where it is even right now?
Well, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. And I know a lot of people are kind of talking about this whole idea that the Rams are all in for right now and they're going to fade. But I don't think they're going to fade in terms of being a good team, because they're well coached. They are going to be able to keep a decent chunk of the talent they've amassed. you probably are going to see them lose guys like Von Miller and Odell. They may not be able to bring those guys back. But we also have to remember that LA is a very appealing place to play for these players. That's why they got Odell in the first place. If the Rams were still in St. Louis, I don't think they get Odell. Everything else exactly the same, but they don't play in LA. I think Odell's in Green Bay or New Orleans or New England.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to remember that.
Wait just a second. That's a really good point. Let's just touch on this really quick, because unpack what you just said with this. The living in LA, the glitzy lifestyle, the beautiful weather, right? A franchise that's winning and has at least a recent history of winning. Versus, let's say to Florida, Miami. Is their owner going to be there next year? The Jacksonville Jaguars, the Arizona Cardinals, the Dallas Cowboys with all of their weirdness, the Houston Texans. I'm speaking to kind of warm weather cities, bigger cities, stuff where you're not as much in that having to play bad. It does stand out, Brendon. It does, as a city in that realm of kind of I know the Chargers would theoretically too, but they're almost kind of sometimes irrelevant despite being kind of good right now. Whereas the Rams are kind of running that like desirable spot to go in the NFL right now. There is no brighter place.
Yeah, can I say nothing irritates me more in the world than when Michael Buffer comes out before home Rams games? There's just something about that really bugs the crap out of me. I don't like it.
Well, for me, it's that it's costing him like $250,000 for that BS, and it's just like, oh, this is such an LA thing. This is such an extravagant, bougie, like it's just.
And then there's the 10 minutes cutting back and forth between celebrities and the crowd.
Yes, that gets way old. That they've been paid to be there in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and we know that because they could never fill that stadium otherwise.
No, they couldn't fill for the Cardinal playoff game. They couldn't get the tickets sold for that game. You can't get a playoff game filled. And one of the Rams fans on my chat went, "It's $2,000." Well, is that because you're paying Michael Buffer $250,000 to say, "Let's get ready to rumble," and Jay-Z to come watch a game that he has no interest in because he's from New York and he only cares about the Jets or the Giants? Could it be that maybe just a little bit there? I'm with you. I don't think that the Rams are going anyway. They could have a thing where Stafford suddenly decides a guy who's collected $250 million in his career as a quarterback. Like, I'm going to take a discount now. I could see the benefits of that. And Aaron Donald go, yeah, I'll do the same. And suddenly they're in scary shape again, where they're not having huge cap points to their top best players. Do you feel like the Rams remain the scariest team in this division going forward?
No, I don't. I think they will lose something. I think eventually the fact that they don't have any draft picks for the next eternity is going to be a problem. Like Aaron Donald is getting to the age, by the way, where you could see him start. He kind of already has.
Yeah.
He's been the undisputed DPOTY for years. Now this year, there were at least 3 or 4 guys ahead of him, I think.
Yes.
Watt, Garrett, Micah Parsons, maybe one other guy too.
Mm-hmm.
So he's already kind of getting there, and you're not going to replace Aaron Donald, maybe ever. The NFL may never see another player like an Aaron Donald, for all we know.
Very good point. Yeah, he had the broken rib in the playoff game last year, and then the knee injury he fought through this year, which is another signs of aging as you start to get dinged up a little more. A guy that never was off the field for injury early on in his career at all. Now it's starting to kind of come up a little bit.
Right. So, and hopefully this LA nonsense will be over in a few years and they'll be back in St. Louis where they belong. So
agreed.
I'm just saying, if you can't sell out your home NFC title game, then maybe you don't belong there.
It's a guy that left his wife in the Midwest for that hot beach bunny over on the West Coast, right? And he's had his fun, but then he's realized she's kind of ditzy. She's really not that into him. And his wife is loyal and she still loves him. And it's like, all right, I'll come home. Okay, here we go.
Right. I kind of feel like the Cardinals are in trouble here because we've got this Kyler Murray stuff going. Hopefully he goes to play baseball, by the way. That would be the dream. Although he would be in the Mariners division too. So we can't get away from Kyler no matter what we do, I guess. Yeah. But how good is Kyler Murray? Are we sure that he's actually really that good? Like
the thing to me you have to consider with baseball is when you as a baseball player come into football, there is a minor league system and it's a deep minor league system and you've got to slowly roll through that thing and bus rides and everything else. And he's 23, 24, he's 24 now, almost 25. And you're going to have to spend 3 years before you even get to the show at 28, 29, probably, unless you get fast tracked through because you're that good, which is such a rarity. Guys tend to take at least that 3-year period. I'd be surprised if he called it on this, Brendon. I think some of this is like the modern NFL negotiating ploy, the whole scrubbing his social media stuff like he has, and it's just him trying to force the hand. I think also the new de jure thing to me in the NFL from ownership standpoint with these rookie quarterbacks has been, oh, look at how bad Goff went. Oh, look at how bad Wentz went when they gave him a contract after that third year a little bit early. And so now the Lamar Jacksons are having to wait. Now Baker Mayfield, who really doesn't deserve a contract extension, though, he's gonna wait, right? Some of these guys are gonna have to wait now because of the cautionary tales that came before him. And the Cardinals are trying to play that same game with Kyler. Brendon, can they play that game? 2 Pro Bowls in his first 3 years, MVP candidate at least through halfway into this season. I'm not saying I'd pay him. I'm not paying. And you heard today, I read reports today, by the way, Brendon, he's asking for supposedly 45 to 50 million a year.
Yeah, and he does have a leg to stand on there, but the thing is, at that size, is he always going to be the guy who gets hurt? Is he always going to be the guy who gets dinged up by the end of the season and has nothing left?
Yeah.
I mean, the Cardinals as a team played badly down the stretch, but he did not play that well down the stretch overall. So if you're looking at a guy who's going to break down after 10 games every year, then no, he's not worth it. Doesn't matter how good the numbers are before then. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if Kyler Murray is somebody we necessarily even need to be afraid of. But the Cardinals, I believe, are over the cap as it is. They already kind of made their moves with the AJ Green and JJ Watt signings.
Yeah.
Those were their all-in moves, and it blew up in their face. JJ Watt will probably never play a full season again. I think they were lucky to get as much out of AJ Green as they did. So they can't really go anywhere. And I don't know if Kingsbury's a good coach either. I'm not sold there. I'm not sure what to make of him yet. So I don't know. I don't see much from Arizona, honestly.
I don't either. They seem to be the one team, whether Murray's there or not, that you could see there being enough that, like you said, their shot was now while he was on the rookie contract. The time you're paying him, no, to answer your question, he can't hold up for a whole season, not with his playing style. And once he loses his legs, with some of the limitations that come with his game and being as short as he is, we've run into that with Russell at times, that he's had to grow around that and understand that. I don't know if Kyler's got that same level of ability to overcome like Russell does in getting over the things that are, detriments to his game being that. So that does leave the Niners. Are they your future kind of, again, the old rival comes back to the forefront as the main dragon in the cave we got to slay?
Yeah, they are going to be a problem. Like when they lost Robert Saleh, I thought their defense was going to take a big step back. It kind of didn't. They were still really good this year.
Yeah.
They went into Lambeau, shut down Aaron Rodgers. Like that's still a great defense without Saleh, which impresses me like crazy.
Well, without corners too, Brendon. No, I'm not. Jason Verrett was the guy who balled out for them the previous year, right? Guy injured through his whole career. They put him and Mosley as their number 2, got 1 and 2 this year, and they're like, Verrett, please, come on, stay healthy, man. Just give us 13 games. 13 games. He was done by like 1 game in. And then Mosley went down. And then they were into 4th, 5th, 6th territory on their corners, and it didn't skip a beat. Kinlaw, top 10 first-round pick 2 years ago, guy that they were hoping would out, the DeForest Buckner replacement, essentially. Out pretty much this whole year. Still didn't skip a beat. Still didn't miss. Still dominant, to your point.
Yeah, and obviously they're well coached. I'll say this, though. There's been a lot of buzz that the Niners are going to try to get a veteran quarterback to replace Jimmy G with. There was some talk they were going to try to get Brady if Brady decided to come back and Tampa decided to go another direction, or Brady decided, I don't want to play here if I don't get to have a super team.
Right.
Because they were going to lose a lot of their guys. I can't think of anything stupider in the NFL than wasting years of a QB's rookie contract. So if the Niners are willing to let Trey Lance sit for 2 years of his rookie deal, then maybe they're not as smart as I think they are. I'll say that. I can't think of anything more ridiculous than sitting a first-round rookie quarterback for 2 years in the modern NFL.
Yeah.
So
I and this is where we have a slight disagreement. I'm agreeing with you. This one was like, in a general rule of thumb, 100% I'd be with you. When you landed an offseason with the potentiality of Aaron Rodgers and Brady being available, and knowing you could bring those guys in And what you would have is with both those guys, a high likelihood that both probably get injured or could run into injury. Brady went through an MCL for a whole season during their Super Bowl run, torn MCL. Rodgers this year was fighting through a broken toe or whatever. And, obviously he's had his share of lower leg injuries. Then you have Lance sitting there on the bench if something goes wrong. You could be in an all-in state, right? You could say, okay, we're going to push all in right now, because we're not only got Brady, we got the backup in play if something goes wrong with Brady. We've got the secondhand thing. And while, you've got him on the rookie contract, you're bringing in Brady, who will take a discount. So he won't charge out your cap to the ultimate, and you can't afford it. Lance ain't costing you a ton. Again, I'm in agreement with you, and I love Lance's upside, but it's like the opportunity almost as the argument I would make. Like the opportunity that is open this year doesn't come along in doubles, but ever as far as I can think back as a situation like this, but you would be wasting his first round deal on that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Brady's on the table at this point. I know there's been a little bit of buzz that he might come back, but wouldn't you still have to trade for him from Tampa? You wouldn't just be able to pick him up, right? You'd have to trade for him.
You would, but dig this. Josh McDaniel just got hired as a diversity hire by the Dolphins, right? Or Mike McDaniel.
Mike
right?
McDaniel.
Now, the 49ers get back what? 2 third-round picks in the next 2 years in compensatory value for that signing. Free. 2 third-round picks. Free. Absolutely free. Okay, so, hey, Tampa, we don't have a first-round pick because of the Lance trade. We'll throw you 2 second-round picks. We're still sitting on 2 third-round picks this year, 2 third-round picks next year. We'll give you a second-round pick this year, a second-round pick next year for Brady, or for Rodgers, or 3 second-round picks for Rodgers. Again, knowing that if anything happens with Rodgers injury-wise, that you've got your backup in place. And I would argue that both with Rodgers and Brady, both would take a discount to come play for their hometown team. A couple of those key aspects within doing that kind of deal. I think it's a scary proposition of happening, Brendon. I know it might not be the smartest move from your standpoint of things, but you would admit that it is, if they pulled those moves, scary nonetheless, because it's built them up against injury, which is one of those things that can knock a big team down. And that's where you're like, oh man, they're starting to it's really coming against, for the foreseeable future here, we're going to be dealing with a monster.
Yeah, I guess it is on the table. And Rodgers has never taken a discount, so we don't have any evidence that he would be willing to do that. But theoretically, it does make sense. I don't know. I just feel like if you're going to give up all that stuff for Trey Lance, you got to play him, unless you really, really see something in practice that you don't like. And maybe that's the case, because Jimmy Garoppolo got to go out there for pretty much every game he was healthy, even though Trey Lance was there. So maybe they did see something there they really didn't like.
Well, did you not have a few times in watching that playoff game with Garoppolo, both with the Packer game and the last game against the Rams, and you go, how could Lance be worse than what you're getting out of Garoppolo here? Did you have that same feeling in watching those games?
I kind of did.
Yeah.
But maybe there was just some sense of like, we can't let a 21-year-old come off the bench cold in a NFC title game on the road. Yeah. I know it's barely on the road because there were 65% Niners fans in there, but maybe there was some sense of that. I don't know. It just feels wrong to me to have a rookie quarterback on that rookie deal and not play him hardly at all and do everything you can to keep him off the field with the way contracts are now. Like, that is such an asset.
Yeah. It's where people have gotten Super Bowl wins recently by going that route of things. So it is the path to go. The last thing I just want to draw forward on this NFC West, because we both agree outside of maybe the Cardinals, who even if the Cardinals have Kyler and they're paying him and all that, they'll still be competitive. They'll still be tough, right? Like, they may not be a perennial playoff team, but they'll be a perennial, at least middle of the road team with Kyler. And if they got DeAndre still there and some relatively good parts and pieces that kind of fit somewhat. Does this not mean that we have to continue to be not just aggressive, but sort of uber aggressive if we're intending to compete? And if not going that way, you've got to go a different route with it. If you're not choosing to stick with these big dogs, doesn't it kind of mean that?
Yeah. You definitely have to be assertive in whatever it is you do in this division right now, because most divisions have that at least one team that is just not even trying right now.
Yeah.
Or at the very least is understanding that, hey, this year's not our year.
Yeah.
So you get to farm free wins. We don't have that in this division. And for the time being, I don't know how long it's going to be before we have that again. The Rams kind of can't do it because they're so well coached. Same for the Niners. And in the case of the Rams, they kind of have to stay on top to try to win over that LA crowd because they need to find their foothold in that city.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals, if the Cardinals don't make the playoffs next year, I could see them blowing it up. I guess, because Kingsbury is gone at that point. Who knows what's going to happen with Kyler, and then they're going to have a bunch of dead money for like JJ Watt and AJ Green, I think. So yeah, that could be, but until then, nobody in this division is going to lay down unless it's the Seahawks.
Yeah. And Hopkins, in addition to that, it's going to be about done at that point too, you would think. So, especially with where they'll be paying him at that point. So it's very well that within a year from now, you could be seeing him in that to your point, rebuild state of things, which helps us out. Be nice to have a little more feast factor in this division versus what it isn't. But I think you can't look at it like you're in the NFC West. You can't look at it like you can't draw equivalents to those other divisions and how you look at the moves you've got to make. You got to make it from an aggressive standpoint, understanding that your division's about 10% better. Your division's about 15% better than the average mean. And so when you operate forward, you've got to build that in with your planning and think of things in that way as much as you can. I know it's hard to maybe contextualize 15% in roster building purposes, but in just general fashion, right, Brendon? Just in a general way of our modus operandi has got to be to understand that we can't look at ourselves like the Lions can look at themselves within that division, or like the Atlanta Falcons can look at themselves within their division. We got to look at ourselves with the Seahawks in the NFC West and what all that encompasses and all that's going to accomplish going into the future of things. I hope the front office understands it as much, Brendon, because sometimes they've gone with moves like, well, no, we're just trying to be competitive with everybody else. No, your division's a little harder than that. You got to go a little bit bigger in that realm. Again, you're all in on this offseason, right? 1 second before I get the comment here real quick. You are all in on that from the standpoint of this offseason. Like, you've got to go out. They're not rebuilding and retooling, so it's.
Yeah, and to anybody who isn't on the go all in train, then just look at what the Rams are doing. I don't know how you could argue against it at this point. Like, it not only is it going to be what it takes for us to keep competitive in this division, it works.
Yeah.
Now you have to get the right guys, but going all in can absolutely work. It can go wrong. Like remember the Dream Team Eagles with Namdi?
Yep.
It can go wrong, but that doesn't mean you don't try it.
That's where it comes down to being the smart organization and tapping into the guys that are the right fits and the right additions that you're going to get the most out of. And that's that is the key to the all in. It's not all in blindly. Like, here's a name, here's a name, here's a name. Who's this guy that fits for this piece we need? Who's that guy that fits for that piece we need? You having an actual plan that you can see out. You can see the Rams plan. And they lost Robert Woods. Go get Odell Beckham. They got Floyd. They got Donald. Donald's getting a lot of double teams. We add Miller. Now we got single blocks across the line. Von Miller gets to have more single blocks than he's probably had in years. And he gets to feast on that. And he does. We'll get Ramsey, and Ramsey's pairing with Donald will make sense because we'll get him out there locking a guy down. We can double up the other side of the field. Now the pressure gets there because our corners are able to, keep things locked down. Everything kind of makes sense, right? It kind of all goes together in its philosophy. It's very logical, I guess, is what I'd say. But I'm glad to hear you're in the same place, but I hope they do understand. Big Wave Dave for the $5 donation. Thank you, Big Wave Dave, and all the folks donating. But I do salute you, Dave. You're awesome. Says, do you guys think the Hawks have a successor for Pete? And when do we talk about that?
I think it's probably a little too early to talk about that. There's a good chance it's somebody that we don't even know about right now. Obviously, I think that some of the thought process when you hired Waldron was that maybe he would be ready to be a head coach by the time Pete was ready to be done. But we're going to need time to see if it develops that way. And I think Sean Desai is actually another guy who might be on that head coach track, where you could see him get to the point where in 3 years he's ready to be a head coach and take over for Pete. But a lot of things have to go right in that process. They have to do well at their current jobs. Pete has to be able to stay on long enough to allow those guys to develop the experience they need. And I think it's a little early to be talking about this as anything more than just like trivia.
I agree with Brendon on this. A couple quick things with this is that, again, Pete's shown no indication that he wants to move on at this point. No indication of any signs of slowing down. Just signed his 4 or 5 year extension last year, midseason. So he is seemingly as invigorated as anybody else. Until I hear him talking about, maybe it's about time for me to be done. I mean, many people might talk about, boy, it seems like your scheme's getting stale. Maybe it's your messaging's not hitting as much. Maybe you can't get as much out of the players. He doesn't seem to be, that doesn't seem to be having any resonance with him. So I don't think he's in any position to move on. And again, Big Wave Dave, always think back to 2006. the Mora Holmgren season of Mora Jr. being his successor as the secondary coach or whatever he was that year, and how that caused some just lack of maybe what is the word I'm looking for here, Brendon? Just it wasn't that there was like friction between them; it just didn't work, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't natural. I think that was 2008 that Jim Mora was here.
Okay,
He might have been here I think he was here the previous year as well.
Previous year,
That year.
that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, is that if you're looking for that successor and waiting on the staff, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and that doesn't really work as well.
Yeah, that's what they keep doing in Dallas, and it doesn't seem like it works. I remember they hired Wade Phillips, but they forced him to take Jason Garrett, and they basically said, "Hey, Jason Garrett's going to be the next coach." And then it was awkward between those two guys, and now they're doing it again with Dan Quinn. By the way, that's going to work out wonderful for them. By the way, I can't wait to see how it goes. But
what a mess!
You don't really want to do that. You want it to happen naturally. You can't write a script here. You have to. Whoever ends up being the right guy becomes that guy.
Really, Big Wave Dave, the thing to say with this is that, and understand with this, because this is for those folks who say that we're going to go into the dark ages if Carroll ever leaves. We have a very attractive spot to come to as a coach. If we don't have Wilson here, maybe that changes things because you don't have the player. But let's just say this: you have a brand new stadium, you have an invigorated, engaged fan base, you have top of the line training facilities, you have an ownership with deep purse strings and is willing to spend. Those things are going to attract the top of the line coaches, as we have been able to bring in a Mike Holmgren, who will probably go to the coaching Hall of Fame someday in the NFL, as we were able to bring in Pete Carroll, who will probably go to the coaching Hall of Fame someday. It's no coincidence that you're able to do that. It's because you are that bright shining spot on the hill for a lot of coaching candidates, and kind of low key in a lot of ways. Doesn't get talked about as much, but it is that, in my opinion. Another $5 thank you, Big Wave Dave, by the way. Very kind of you. Charles Riley, who always comes in with multiple donations on the chat. I appreciate you, Charles. You're awesome. He says, Kyler is a crazy talented baseball player. I think the A's drafted him in the early first round. He is. But I will say even the crazy first round guys do tend to take a little, outside of Ken Griffey Jr. Or Alex Rodriguez. Those type of guys that are at that spot, it takes them that minimum 2 to 3 years to get on through. And when you're talking about a guy going through his mid-20s, and baseball now that we're out of the steroid era and no longer are you in your prime at 36 years old as your head suddenly enlarging, for no particular reasons, of course, just naturally, Brendon, right? Just naturally enlarging. I think that could be something that dissuades him a little bit versus if he goes one more year, even just being a Pro Bowl level quarterback, he's probably not getting 45 to 50, but he's going to get 35 because that's going to be what the market rate is for the second tier guys or the 1A guys, tier 1A, I guess is what I'd say, right?
I think he actually probably has more of a claim to a payday than Dak Prescott did, and Dak got $40 million a year. I think you could at least make that argument, especially when Dak was coming off a career-altering injury when he signed that contract. So if Dak gets 40, then Kyler's got a pretty strong argument for 45 to 50.
Yeah. And the Cardinals have got to think about this as well a little bit, right? Because if you do wait that extra year, as Dallas ended up having to face with Dak because they didn't pay him after year 3, they made him wait as long as they could make him wait. That you end up having to pay a higher price per year than what you would have had to pay if you just did the multi-year deal. So as hard as it is to swallow 45 to 50 right now, it ain't as hard to swallow as 55 to 60 in 2023, right? If you wait. So
yeah. I mean, I will say, I think the Cardinals should probably extend him. It's certainly not a comfortable spot. It's not like when the Packers extended Aaron Rodgers and they were like, well, it's a lot of money, but we'll be fine. It's Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely a no-brainer. And this is one where it's something Talone talked about on the chat here with my side of this, Brendon, of who's going to be that franchise that's going to be smart about this, that's not going to get caught in the trap of, well, he's our quarterback and he's the next guy up. And yeah, he's not perfect, but we got to pay him. But versus looking at the past history of all the guys that get paid and then what happens to you when trying to roster build versus the team that might be a little more forward-thinking, this, Brendon, who truly embrace building the full team, keeping that where they're going and always just sticking with, let's say, a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. Like you're talking about Lance, getting the most out of those early rookie years of that deal and then just riding with it. Like I'm not certain, Brendon, that the Ravens aren't doing this right now with Lamar because he's gone through now gone through the fifth year option, still haven't gotten him onto the contract extension. A guy who's been an MVP in this league, who's gotten you the playoffs, won you playoff games, who's been a Superman at times on the field and what you've asked him to do. But yet they've still been hesitant to pull that trigger while, by the way, building out that whole team still around him. That's still a very deep roster out around Lamar. It's getting a little bit older now. It's getting a little bit lessened in recent years, but they do a good job of drafting and they restock. And they might be that first team to say, you know what, we're going to move Lamar, get ourselves a couple first round picks and go back with Malik Willis in this draft. And Malik Willis will then run all of our Lamar Jackson stuff. Willis is very much a, McNair kind of guy like that, that mold.
I mean, Lamar's really fallen off a cliff since winning the MVP last year. His passing stat line looks like something out of the 1990s.
Yeah,
it's not that good, and he's not nearly as big a threat running the ball. That might actually end up being really smart if they just decide we're not going to get involved in this.
Yeah. I'm an advocate for this. It's separate of this Russell situation right now. It's not in regards to this Russell. We're here where we are. I want to keep him, but in general terms, if I was a general manager running things, Brendon, I would be having guys developing plans. Develop me my plan in place for how our franchise is going to run with a rookie quarterback on a first round contract that we get 5 years of club control if we want. We'll throw 2 years of franchise tag on top if we really want to do that. If we want to get hardcore, cold blooded. And put my plan together of how we're going to put our roster up around that guy. And I think that, again, you look at the recent Super Bowl winners last 15 to 20 years, you'll find a whole lot more guys on that rookie contract than you are going to find guys on those big, massive deals. And I'm not talking about market breaking deals. I'm not talking about taking up, 25% of the cap. I'm talking about just that, like we're talking about with Kyler, your 1A deals. You're okay. We're not pushing the market 50 million, but you're at 37.5 million, I mean, that's where you go, I can get a lot of guys with that. I could put a pretty good roster together with that.
Yeah.
Would you do it if you had an ideal on a team? I know it's a random question, but if you had an ideal on a team, would you lean towards going to build the super roster with the rookie quarterback first round pick? Or would you, hey, if I find my guy, like if you happen to luck into him like a Russell Wilson, you find him, I'm going to pay him and I'm going to build around him. And that's more of the blueprint to lean into.
I think we are definitely headed towards the point where you don't pay the quarterback just because the QB market right now is kind of like a bubble and it's just going to keep going up until somebody does something about it. And honestly, I think the Niners are a great candidate to be that team because they've been able to have success with a bad quarterback.
Yeah.
Like they almost won the Super Bowl twice with Jimmy Garoppolo. And I know I said in one of my videos a couple weeks ago that Jimmy's a terrible quarterback and I got so many angry Niners fans.
Really?
Which is weird to me. Like, if I were a Niners fan, I would despise Jimmy Garoppolo because he's cost me 2 Super Bowls.
It's not even a controversial take, man. I mean, that's pretty,
Yeah. I don't get it. Like, one of my best friends is a Niners fan. He hates Jimmy. He thinks he's awful, and he can't wait for him to be out of there because he's bad. Why would you defend a player just because he's on your team because he's bad? I didn't defend Michael Kendricks when he was here a couple years ago. No, I hated him because he was bad.
Yeah.
Couldn't tackle at all. But anyway, I do think we are headed that way, and it would not surprise me if the 49ers tried to do that because they've proven they can win with a bad quarterback. So why can't they just try to win with an average quarterback? Why pay a quarterback?
It's totally true. And we'll see what they do at the end of the Trey Lance deal. But I think you're right. They would be one of those teams. I think the Ravens are one of those teams that really stand out to me as those guys that could try to pull it off. And they might be just crazy enough to make it work. And once a team makes it work, Brendon, once they show that you can do it, especially if they've passed on a guy to bring it in, that will create a trend in the NFL where you'll see a whole lot of copycats on the back of that at that point, the second it happens. Charles Wright with another $5 donation. Charles, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. He says, Pete Carroll will soon be in the Hall of Fame for guys with feathered hair. James Spader was the first induction, but Pete is close behind. No doubt about that, man.
Yeah. And by the way, as to the whole Hall of Fame thing, if Pete doesn't get into the Hall of Fame, then I don't know why the Hall of Fame is still there. His credentials are clearly Hall of Fame caliber, not just what he did as a head coach.
Yeah, there's no way you can't. I mean, look, he was a coordinator on the Bill Walsh staffs with Bud Grant in the Minnesota time. You got to take all that into account for a guy. And it's not just what he did as a head coach with the Seahawks or the Jets or the Patriots, but the whole shebang. And again, if you change the sport to me, you're a Hall of Famer, whether you're a player or a coach. If you come in the sport's one way and then you do something to change it in a major way, and what Carroll did in bringing zone defense back to the fray, bringing 6-foot cornerbacks back into the fray, going back as the league was going into pass happy states and spread formations. And no, we're going to run the ball. We're just going to run at you. I think that some of those things will be, when looked at in respect of, he guided a lot of some of this stuff, subtly a little bit maybe, and not in the way you see with other guys driving stuff, but that he's a Hall of Famer. First ballot, no doubt to me, Brendon. You can't deny it with him on that. And thank you, Charles. Feathered hair, there's nothing like feathered hair either, by the way.
I think some people try to make it way too black and white with the Pete Carroll thing. Like, because we don't think he's a good coach now, we have to question everything he ever did. It's possible he was a great coach and now he's not. Like, it seems like some people want to go all or nothing with Pete, where they either say, oh, he was never any good, he just got lucky, or he was good back then, so he has to be good now. It's possible that he just got worse. It happens all the time.
And it goes both ways. It's it's the people that will think, and when you're criticizing him and going, okay, well, this is bad, that you don't respect what he did do here or what he has accomplished here, which it's like, you can do both things at once. You can criticize, you can say, this is not great right here, but I still do revere the guy and hold him in high esteem for everything he's done, and we'll love him forever as our head coach of the Seahawks because he brought us a Super Bowl championship, the only one we got, no doubt about it. But, it doesn't change. One doesn't change the other. They're not mutually inexclusive to talk about on either side of things, in my opinion. So,
right.
Well, we touched on pretty much all the subjects that I had kind of on my list on this. Is there anything that you want to kind of wrap up on? Is just kind of any last thoughts or anything that's kind of burned on your front burner here?
No, not really. We're just kind of in a holding pattern. I want the dust to clear on this defensive coordinator stuff. I want to figure out if I need to get mad or not. It really sucks sitting here knowing you're probably going to get mad, but you can't get mad yet. That's the worst.
Yeah, what a great way to put it. It is. It's like the hammer's coming down. I don't know when, and I keep bracing and wincing for it, but I don't know when it comes down. I'm the same way with you. I just let's let this settle out, because I do have that sneaking suspicion that Desai won't come here because of the fact, again, you filled now the secondary coach, which to me, I think they didn't bring him in to fill the secondary coach because he probably told them he would rather go with Donatel to the Vikings at that point rather than come here under Carroll. That would be that they already know which way this is going to kind of all shake out. Just the media and all of us are a little bit behind the ball on that, which at that point will get you and me both a little depressed about where the defense is going to be at next season.
Yeah, because for a week there, it looked like Carroll was actually going to change his defense because he was bringing in all these Fangio guys. But now it's hard to say.
Yeah. We don't know which way it's going to go for sure at that point going forward. Whereas if it was going with those guys, there's some things they do wrinkle-wise. Carroll's not done, though. To your point, they did a little bit of it last year, but then you bring in the experts in how to do it. You bring in the experts on the split safety play. You bring the experts in playing a little bit more of the unique 4-3 under, where you got the defensive ends inside a little bit in running plays. That would have been nice, but who knows? Maybe they do that pull the rug out thing, Brendon. Your idea, pull the rug out at this point. Say, Clint, look, sorry, buddy. I know you're going to want to go to Miami or go somewhere else at this point, but we've got to get a top of the line guy. That's what we thought we were bringing in.
Well, the Miami job's closed, by the way. Somebody already filled that. So
I know.
he would just be stuck.
And
that would suck to be him. But what do you want? What do you want me to do here?
Yeah, that's we got to get the best candidate. And again,
it's not open mic night.
Yeah, it's not like, well, we're going to try out all the first timers here, and then you go be whatever you'll be later on after you got through all your bumps in the road. Charles Riley, another $5 donation, closing us out right. Charles. Man, lots of donations today from you. Thank you so much, brother. Says, well, what we really needed to know is who is responsible for drafting Russ. Got to be John, because nobody with great feathered hair is capable of that. No, you don't think a feathered hair guy could draft Russ? And it was John who drafted Russ.
Oh, yeah. Right? John had to convince Pete to do it. John had a crush on Wilson running 2 years back. I think Pete didn't want him, actually. And that was one of the John picks. That's one of the few guys we know as being a John Schneider pick.
Which is the irony now, Brendon, because what's reported on now is Schneider is kind of done with real Wilson, not because necessarily Wilson, but is almost because of his agent. Like, he's not had the greatest of go-arounds with Rodgers. And so Schneider was a guy last year that was supposedly kind of pushing for the trade to go down. And it was Carroll who supposedly held the line and said, no. So they've sort of crossed in the middle of the night, like two boats, in two opposite directions on that, which is kind of interesting. But you're right on that.
I can understand getting sick of dealing with Wilson's agent, though. I've never been one to fault Wilson for always wanting to get maximum money, because I think that's understandable
Mhm.
for a person in his position to do. But it must get a little tiring. Do you remember? I was talking about this in a recent stream, and a lot of people didn't remember. Do you remember after his rookie year when there was a leak that apparently he was going to try to get extended after his rookie season, which you can't do?
I
And
didn't.
then Wilson's camp came out and said, "Oh, no, we never said, we don't want anything like that." And then a couple days later, Wilson fired his agent and brought in Mark Rogers. I
Okay.
always kind of thought Wilson was kind of like trying to see, is there some way I can get my money now? Because I don't want to play for peanuts after having this great rookie year. And then the agent leaked something he wasn't supposed to, and then they had to fire him because he looked terrible. Do you remember this? I remember it as it was happening.
I don't remember it happening, but I also wouldn't be surprised at that being, the case of the way it played out. So,
Mhm,
it's certain. And look, Rogers has taken my problem with Rogers is he's a baseball agent, not a football agent, first off.
mhm,
So he's bringing that baseball mentality to play in the
mhm.
negotiations, which baseball is a guaranteed sport, and the players have a little more leverage in that sport in dictating the contracts to the owners versus football, where owners can kind of dictate contracts to players. And the whole percentage of the cap stuff that they've talked about with him. I mean, can you imagine that as a general manager? He comes in and that's the first point of negotiations. We want 20% of the cap as a rolling figure every single year. Wherever the cap goes to, we're going to take 20%. Well, that was the last negotiations were that. That's what led to the Cleveland Browns trade talk was that. I mean, they weren't just throwing it out there as like a lobbing a grenade generally. That was like, no, this is a real opening offer from our camp to your camp of what we have as an expectation level. This is our beginning place. And if and wait, the contracts don't work that way in the NFL. Nobody does that. Why do you guys think you can do that? And you come back to again, baseball agent, probably would like some other football clientele, right, Brendon? I'm sure he wouldn't turn down getting some other guys. So he wants to get as much effort he can as Wilson, make him look great to potentially bring in some other football guys under his roster. It hasn't happened because I don't think the word around the league is that he's got the greatest reputation in negotiations because of this. This is the fallout from that. But he's not my favorite guy because then I can understand why Schneider be a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah. The point I'm
um,
trying to make here is that a lot of players, or almost every player, is trying to get as much money as they can. But it feels like Wilson goes for it more than just about anybody else.
he
Every
does.
negotiation goes to the 11th hour, the
Mhm.
20% rolling figure thing. Like it does wear on you, start to wear on you a little bit. I can understand that.
Especially when as we've talked about just in this show alone, the realities of dealing with when you pay a quarterback this amount of money. It is not funny money. The cap is real. As you said, you can bend it, but you can't break it. The rules of the matrix apply. You push that 11th hour, and they're asking for every last dollar bill. It does stretch you. It does.
Hmm.
It does hit you, and you feel that, and it hurts that you got to. It draws both, not just one negotiation, right? Two negotiations. We went to that 11th hour. So
Hmm.
it'll be interesting to see where this Russell Wilson situation goes, but that will impact it if he is traded. Make no mistake about it. The Rodgers negotiation aspect of this will have been not everything, not a big part, but it will have been a part as to why the team will have embraced at that point going in that direction. It will have
Right.
factored in.
Right.
Well, Charles, thank you for all of your donations today on the channel. Awesome on your part. You're always very kind and very giving in that respect. Another great show here today, Brendon. We're going to be going over to your channel next week at 7 o'clock, unless anything changes down the track. I should be good to go on that.
Yep.
And we're going to kind of discuss what we'll be doing on a show for next week. As I said, each of these shows, we're going to be trying to target in on some specific things. We'll soon be getting to some prospect stuff. We're still got some of the stuff to turn over with coaches and free agency and stuff. So we're just kind of taking this part by part. But we will be back at this next week on Brendon's channel. If you're not subscribed to Brendon's channel, go down in my description link. You'll see a link there to Seahawks Brendon Nelson's channel. Go click on that link, subscribe to that channel. Doesn't cost you a thing. Helps him out greatly. Helps me out as well. We're rising together here as we're getting up and up and up. So please go over there and do that. Does some great nearly daily content, right, Brendon? If you can, just about. So great stuff. Always on top of the news coming down the track. You're not going to be missing anything by going over there and checking out Brendon's channel. So please go do that. We will be back at this next week, next Thursday. But other than that, please don't forget until that time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Oh, and I forgot. Thank you, Brendon, by the way, for coming to the channel. I always forget that part.
No problem. Oh, real quick here before we close the door on this show, the class of the Hall of Fame for 2022 has been announced. Still no Mike Holmgren. One
Oof.
more year at least. Dick Vermeil got in, by the way, and I'm sorry if Dick Vermeil gets in, then Holmgren should be in. So
100%. Holmgren should have, in my opinion. I mean, I know Vermeil retired maybe a little before, but he should be in before, in my opinion, Vermeil. Maybe that's just
yeah,
another argument for another day, but he'll
yeah,
get in there eventually. He
yeah.
will get in there eventually.
Doesn't look like any former Seahawks. Tony Baselli, Cliff Branch, Leroy Butler, Art McNally, Sam Mills, Richard Seymour, Bryant Young, and Dick Vermeil. So
I'm
interesting.
Tony Baselli. What did he play? 5 years? I mean, five years at the left tackle position or something like that. I
Well, okay, he played 7 years. He made 5 Pro Bowls, and then he was done. Yeah. Did not play a
I
long career at all.
I
Wow.
mean, from your standpoint, were you as aware of him being such a dominant force in that five? He played Pro Bowl, upper level player. Was he a dominant force to be a Hall of Famer? I mean,
Yeah, it's
eh,
it's questionable for sure.
who are the other guys you had on there?
Cliff Branch,
Yeah,
Leroy
okay.
Butler, Art McNally, Sam Mills, who I think was that tight end for the Panthers, if I remember correctly, or was he No, he was the
Linebacker.
linebacker.
Yes.
Richard Seymour and Bryant Young.
Yeah, Sam Mills was London Fletcher before London Fletcher.
Hmm.
Undersized middle linebacker that just made a gob amount of tackles. Zach Thomas, same style of
Hmm.
linebacker, one of these little just
Yeah,
mighty might kind of guys. Leroy makes sense. That's another one of those free safeties that played until he was like 39 years old in the league and played pretty good. So
yeah.
that list makes sense. I don't like the Boselli one though. That's
Yeah.
trash.
Also, not getting in is Devin Hester, by the way, which to me is also a joke. Like, he's the best ever at what he did. I don't know how you keep him out, but that's a conversation for another time.
Yeah, that's another time. And give me your Super Bowl picks real quick. Just who you got those winning division.
I guess I got to go with the Rams here. To go against the Rams would make so little sense, knowing the fact that the Bengals have such a bad offensive line and a bad pass rush, and the Rams have an elite pass rush and an elite offensive line. If the Bengals win, everything we know about football needs to be questioned.
I'm gonna have an off season of Ram fans filling my chat up, just pounding their chest. Brendon, I'm with Brendon. Rams are going to take it. I'm not happy to say so, but for the reasons he said, weakness on strength. Football's a matchup game. It's why we do good against the 49ers, and the 49ers usually do good against the Rams. It is that way, and this is a bad matchup for the Bengals. This goes against where they're weak. So
absolutely.
too bad, so
All
sad,
right.
but go Bengals nonetheless. Before go Bengals, go Hawks. So thank you, Brendon.
Go Hawks.